All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to have you all here to RVA Rapids Transit Talk. This is where we give you information, topics, what's happening within public transportation within the Richmond region. My name is Faith Walker. I am the Executive Director for RVA Rapid Transit. We are a nonprofit here in the Richmond region. We advocate for frequent and far-reaching public transportation. We do that in three ways. We want to see more buses go more places. So not just within the city limits, we want to see buses go out into the county lines, and then also dignified places to wait. We want to see more shelters and benches be installed throughout the region. And then last but not least, we want to elevate bus riders' voices in transit planning and decision making. And so this is the perfect topic. We have some special guests with us from the city of Richmond. And this plan that we're going to discuss later on in the program is really right within our pillar. We want to make sure bus riders have opportunities to engage with agencies and also local government and what they want to see in their community. And this is exactly what's being done in the city of Richmond, and I'm proud of that work. But before we get started, I want to go over some housekeeping rules and notes. This is recorded, and so we would love for you to reshare this or go back to it if you want to. And so we would ask everyone to stay on mute. If you have a question, you can just place your question in the chat. We'll be sure to answer it. But also, if you just want to chat, we love to hear your feedback or give any comments that you have. But if you do have a question, make sure you do hashtag Q so that when we go back to the questions, we know exactly where you are or where your question, so we won't miss it. So again, hashtag Q for your questions. But before we get started, we want to give you some news. This is our portion where we give you news on what's happening in the region. And there we go. So what's up with the bus? This is also something that we use in our newsletter. So if you have not registered for RV Rapid Transit newsletter, I encourage you to do so. You can visit our website and sign up. So what's happening on the bus? So micro transit. Micro transit has launched. There is 4 zones that are happening right now. And one happened, the first zone happened in November 13th of 2023. Cloverdale launched in March. Ashland launched March 18th, and then Powhatan just launched this week. So there's loads and loads of transit or new system or new opportunity running right now for public transportation access. So I want to just show you some of the slides that I got from GRTC's board meeting, this past board meeting. I thought they were really interesting, and I wanted to share them with you. So this is so really, as the Azalea Zone has been the longest running microtransit available. So this is the best person to get or best route to get some accuracy or even some data from. So as you can see, it launched in November and it has steady increased on the amount of riders. As you can see in February, I mean, the numbers just jumped. Imagine just in November when it launched, it was only 80 rides. Now we're up to over 200 and something, 2,000 and something rides. And then you can look at the daily ridership. So it has bumped up to over 101 people using it daily, or 101 trips and stops. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, I just wanted to show you too, these are some of the centers. So what this has done is it shows you where people are going. What's the highest destination based on a heat map. So if you see bright yellow or bright red, that's going to be the most dense and concentrated stop. So it looks like a lot of people are going to the Brook Hill Azalea Shopping Center. A lot of folks are either going to and from Ridgefield Village apartments at the Arbors and also Treehouse apartments. And then also a lot of people are going to work to Amazon. That's exactly what we want. We know that frequent and far-reaching public transportation allows people to get from one destination to the next, but also it gives them the ability to access jobs and economic mobility. And then Ginner Park, this Ginner Park area, if you can see this over here a little bit, there's some concentration over there in that area. So I just wanted to share that with you. Let's see, let's go to the next one. And even the Azalea Zone, So if you order microtransit within the four zones, they want to make sure that your trip is accessible and you're able to get it within 20 minutes. GRTC is doing above and beyond that. So they're slicing that in half. Basically, they're right under that. So anywhere from 8 to 11 to 12 minutes wait for you to get your Uber. And sometimes Uber can take you longer than that. So this is definitely a great service. And if you don't know what microtransit picks you up from a destination and drops you off at a destination. But that destination has to be within the zone. As you can see, the zone is represented in the purple. And so those four zones, Azalea, Powhatan, Clover, and the other one escapes me right now. You have to be picked up or dropped off within that zone. Okay. All right. And so this is some other data information that I thought was very interesting. Ridership is up. This is the pulse. As you can see, the pulse is climbing in ridership. There's no drop there. And then look at the 1A. The 1A, as you know, has been extended all the way down to the shopping centers of Walmart and Sam's Club, up and down Midlothian Turnpike. That ridership and the usage of that has jumped up to 46%. That's amazing. Okay. And then also look at the 19. The 19 was extended from just a little past Short Pump area all the way to Sheltering Arms. That has jumped up almost 50% of usage. And there was another map that was shown at GRTC that shows that the concentration location for those routes, for 1A, it was the Walmart Center. So either people are shopping, getting groceries and necessities, or they're going to work. And so either or is great. And then for the 19, a lot of people are using it to access Sheltering Arms, whether it's to go to work or to have services or appointments or visit family who are there. So I'm excited. I just wanted to definitely share that with you all. I just also wanted to share ridership is just up. As you can look over the left-hand side, 73% up on the 78 in Carytown. So that's quite impressive. So what I wanted to do was turn it over to Stephanie. I want to just announce she has been a transit ambassador with the organization for the last year, right? Going out, engaging bus riders, getting their comments, and sending them to GRTC and posting them within our social media. She has been elevated, and I'm happy to say, to the position of community engagement and programs manager. So I'll turn it over to her.
Okay, thank you so much, Faith. Yeah, it's true. I'm super excited to take on a deeper role with RVA Rapid Transit and just kind of continue and to doing the good work that I've been learning how to do for the last year. And one example of like an amazing experience I've had so far working with RVA Rapid Transit is actually this gentleman that we see on our screen right now. This is Wade Fleming. So Wade is a long time. He's born and raised in Richmond. He's been here. I think he's in his 60s. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing that. He's a long time advocate, and we met at 23rd and Franklin last year. I was out collecting comments. And what we do, with our Riders Voice program, for those who are not familiar, I think maybe y'all are, but if you're not, we go out to bus stops, we go out to the transfer station, and we engage riders. We have our voice recorders, and we ask, what's on your mind? What's your transit story? Where are you coming from? Where are you going to? How is the bus working for you? And maybe how is it not working for you? And what we find is most folks have a story. And it's one that is like um, very practical, of course, right? People use the bus all the time to get to work, to get to their appointments, to connect to the city and to the region. Of course, we know this. And then often people are also going through stuff, right? So anyway, I met Wade at 23rd and Franklin, and the story basically is I went there, got connected with him. He tells me all about the advocacy work he's already been doing for years. And it kind of seemed like he didn't really know where to go with his comments moving forward. And the very next day, I went back to the same bus stop, which never, it doesn't tend to happen. Usually I'll jump around the city a little bit. And I happened to run into Wade again. He just happened to be there at the same stop. And he had in his hand a 3-page handwritten note full of comments for me. And it was, he had my name on the top, and we hadn't exchanged phone numbers at this point. So it was a real synchronistic event. Anyways, so fast forward, Wade is now a graduate of our Mobility University program. And maybe it was a couple weeks ago, a reporter at VPM interviewed Wade. So this is Wade's story through the lens of Billy Shields, reporter. So yeah, Faith, you want to play it? And we're just so proud to be in connection with Wade and like just be in community with him because he's already doing the advocacy work, but now we're just, we're bolstering it. We're with him, and he shows up to all of our events, and we learn from him as much as he learns from us. So we're really proud of this connection. Can't hear it yet. Yeah, maybe the sometimes the videos just mute themselves automatically. So down there on the bar.
It was because I was muted. That's why.
Okay, mute it.
Let's try this again, y'all.
That'll do it.
Wade Fleming is a regular user of Richmond's bus system. He takes the bus every day, and because he has arthritis, he walks with a cane. It's something that has its own challenges.
Crossing the street, for one thing, is challenging, and it's hard for you to step up because sometimes they'll be in the middle of the street. They don't pull to the curb, and you staying in the middle of the street, and you have to, step up to get on the bus. It's hard for somebody with a cane or a walker.
Fleming is well aware of another challenge, what transit advocates call first mile, last mile, which refers to the distance a bus passenger has to walk to get to the bus or from the bus to their destination.
If you drive a car all the time, you don't have the same perspective as someone who's a transit rider. I'm a bus rider as well as a biker, so it's literally simple things like sidewalks that are even that have a ramp in order to get on them, such that if a person's in a wheelchair, they have an easy way to move to the street.
Free question. Users of Richmond's bus system also point out that in addition to uneven sidewalks, there are not as many bus huts as there should be, something Fleming dealt with recently as he waited on a connection.
Some stops don't have no seating, no place where you can stay that in the rain or snow.
All of the buses have adjustable ramps to help passengers board, but Fleming says not every driver uses them.
The bus driver should automatic let the ramp down so handicapped people get off and on the bus. They shouldn't have to ask.
After Fleming runs an errand at the hardware store, he'll have a 2-bus connection to get back to his home on the edge of town.
Wow. Awesome. Well, I'm so proud of that work. Thank you, Stephanie. Excuse me, guys. Thank you, Stephanie, and Wade for sharing your story. And so now we're here, and it's so great that we heard Wade's story and his transition and how he navigates his first and last mile. Let's get to the meat of why we're all here today. The city of Richmond has been working on a wonderful plan called Richmond Connects. I've been in the process of this from the very beginning and all the way through the end. And I can say this is by far one of the best plans and community engagement that I have ever been a part of. And so what I want to do right now is invite on Kelly Nash Rowan, who is the Transit Planning and Mobility Manager for the Office of Equitable Transit and Mobility, and Shanice Brown, the Community Engagement Coordinator, who led the engagement for this project. So I just wanted to turn over to you two ladies and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Faith. And thank you to everybody that jumped on today. I figured I might start by asking, show of hands, how many people on this call participated in Richmond Connects in some way? Did you do a survey? Did you come to our meeting? You can do reactions or real hands. I know Felicia also helped with our outreach. Oh, cool. It looks like about half the people. I know a couple other people on this call. I know y'all's names, and I saw you at meetings. So I kind of assumed people had been a little bit involved in Richmond Connects. So as Faith said, Richmond Connects is the multimodal transportation plan for the city. It is the first time that the city and that I know of any city that has approached their transportation plan with an equity lens as the driving factor when asking, what should transportation do? Usually that's kind of like an afterthought or a piece of it, but that was like our focus for this whole planning process. So I wanted to first say, we did it. City Council adopted the plan on Monday, which just feels like eons ago now, but we are still in the celebratory phase. So I have to say congratulations to our whole team and everybody that's on this call that participated, because this was really like a people centered plan. Like it was not us, it was us guiding the feedback that we got into a plan. So first off, congrats. But why does it matter? Okay, so we had a plan in 2013, or Richmond Connects plan. All kinds of stuff had been done since then, right? The Pulse, all kinds of transportation had been brought online. But also that outdated plan, like we weren't really making decisions based on that. There was not really like a solid format or a plan for where people were pulling projects from that the city was applying for. We were really kind of just like chasing dollars rather than asking people what they want. So why it matters, it gives us right now what in 2024 are people's priorities, so we can make decisions based on that. It also brings in a lot of equity centered data to help us prioritize those projects. And it gives us, we use a lot of different metrics so that we can tie different project types to different funding categories. So it sets us up better for if there's like a new program comes out for small bite projects. Okay, we have small projects and we have bite projects. Like we have something to pull from. And tells us, what projects we need to start developing for the future applications. This picture, the mayor loved it, so I have to, give a shout out. He was pretty pumped when we, walked through all of the wonderful work that had been done. Importantly, it moves us towards our vision, right? We had set this vision in the master plan that we were going to prioritize the movement of people over the movement of cars. That's like a big statement to have. And we didn't really have a whole bunch of specifics on how we were going to do that. And that's what this plan does. We also had this guiding kind of vision on what equity is. And the city went through a public engagement process and developed this definition that true equity is empowering people and communities that have experienced past injustices by removing barriers to access and opportunity. And we use that statement so much when we were picking like how we're going to measure transportation. What is transportation supposed to do? It should empower people and communities that have experienced these past injustices. Where were these past injustices? We mapped all of those. We did this through a lot of data. But it really helped us kind of like realize those two things. I think this is probably a group that are already fully aware of this, but just to highlight, like equity is not equal distribution of resources. It is not saying every district and every area needs something. It's saying where are the gaps and helping to fill those gaps so that everyone gets the apple, right? Everyone gets to the same outcome. The same resources do not get everyone to the same outcome. We need to direct resources and specific types of resources to different social groups in our city. The same solution, you can't give a person in a wheelchair a bike and ask them to ride. We have to tailor those solutions to meeting people where they're at. We looked at, making sure that we captured all of these kind of various intersecting factors within our social structure that contribute to these inequities. Luckily, we have a wonderful census and a lot of other data that's available to be able to map all of those things. So I kind of referenced, the really taking to heart that piece about past injustices and removing barriers to access. So this is a throwback to even before Richmond Connect started, we did the Path to Equity, where we worked really hard to describe what we want transportation to do in terms of those past inequities. So, improving access that was limited by redlining. We want to address the highway system dissection neighborhood. We want to, and this is transportation should, right? Not just we should, but transportation should improve connectivity where urban renewal broke up that neighborhood connectivity, so on and so forth. I mean, we call ourselves out that we should be addressing how the injustice of our past planning has contributed to this unsafe and inequitable network. We had other 5 that really focused on those access barriers that we asked Richmonders, where do you face barriers to access? And then translated that to these equity factors. Those helped guide the mapping and needs identification process. And we're really, that plus those vision statements were really kind of like our policy that we worked from. This is my 2 years of work in one slide. I would say to summarize the overall process, we led with data. So GAYR, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. If you aren't a member, if you're in a local organization, a local government, you should join. It's great. So many good resources. But, they have lots of resource guides. But one key fact that, I hear reiterated over and over is that we have to be able to show these inequities with data. So that's really what we started with. We mapped our whole city, said where is transportation not doing all those things we said it should do. We then asked Richmonders, this is what we think the data says. What do you need? We can look at data, but we can also just ask directly, what do you need? What is wrong? What is broken? What needs fixing? And we did that in a couple different phases and then asked again, which of these are the worst problems? Okay, it's really easy for us to come up with this big long list of problems. We all know there's all kinds of problems. Which of these are the worst problems? Pulled those out and pulled out throughout the process. We're sure to amplify those voices of our communities of opportunity. Shanice can talk more about, tactics in the second half of this, but we made sure, even when we didn't hear from as many of those people in some of the phases, that those voices were amplified. For example, in the needs assessment process, we did focus groups with just members of our communities of opportunity, and where they said there were problems, and where Shanice also, when she was out doing her pop-ups, where people said there were problems, even if the data didn't say that was there, we still put those on the map. And they got the same level of importance as the highest data-driven needs. We just said people know their city just as well as our data knows, right? Like we can interpret it, but people also know. So those 2 things got the same level of importance. We consulted the experts. We then pulled in over 8,000 projects that some of them were from the survey. Actually, some of them were people had suggested projects. We actually drew those on a map. We pulled in stuff from Plan RVA. We pulled in stuff from all of our regional partners, past planning, overlaid it with where people said were the highest needs, pulled those projects, and where there wasn't a project, we drew a project or developed a project with our planners and our engineers. And then lastly, we empowered Richmonders in the last phase to pick which of those projects. Okay, we asked you what needs to be fixed. Here's how we think we can fix it. Which of these is the most important? And that's how we ended up with the final action plan. In the final action plan that was adopted by council, the first, the first 40 projects were the projects that were directly, just those were the number one from the survey. This is what Richmonders said we should do. You see North-South BRT is in that. You see the very first one was just a whole bunch of different sidewalk projects we bundled together and just said equity-driven sidewalks. You see the bus stop infrastructure. You see a lot of the stuff that we talk about in this kind of like subgroup of people that are on this call. We then included some projects that already had money that scored well or medium, and some of them that actually weren't in the final survey, but that were in the CIP that the administration didn't want to pull things out that already had money tied to it, being a good of taxpayer dollars. And then there was a handful of other shorter term, kind of easier projects, not necessarily easy, but projects that, for instance, there were some transit route frequency enhancements that we know GRTC was already putting in the TSP. They scored medium to medium high. Like, let's include that. Like, that's kind of an easy win. We should do those things. GRTC already wants to do it. Richmonders mostly want to do it. Let's do it. And that's how we ended up with the action plan. To kind of summarize like big takeaways, if I had an elevator speech, it would probably be these big moves. That Richmond Connects really stresses rethinking central transit infrastructure. I have stolen Faith's language on bus stops as a dignified placemaking opportunity. I just love, I just love that wording. And so I put it in there. We put it in there. We also identified that we shouldn't have to wait for some of this stuff. We heard that. Why can't we do something now? So we have started a lighter, quicker, cheaper program. You'll see some stuff coming out this summer with some Richmond Connect signs around it that are those, act quick projects. Just acknowledging really that, transit it's a civil right. It's a civil rights issue at this point. Like, it is providing a vital access, and, we can't kind of achieve the spatial justice if we don't have this well-connected network. Closing the gaps, that one really is referring to a lot of our programming that we also recommended in the plan, like our free rides to work program, or like giving out free e-bikes, or those sort of programmatic things that can close the gaps in access. And then sidewalks. In the meeting with the mayor, he asked me, like, what is the thing you're most excited about? And I said, it is not the beautiful big project, ribbon cutting, all this stuff. I said, it is just sidewalks. That's the thing I'm most excited about. Like, if we can find an innovative way as a city to collectively put in these sidewalk projects and get them funded, like that is what people ask for. That is, we heard that so loud and clear. They're like, I just want my sidewalk. I just want to be able to walk on the sidewalk without tripping. And, there not being a big gap. So like, we heard you. That's top of the list. I'm not going to read through all this, but, and you all actually probably got this in a flyer in your email, but there are a lot of major projects that came out of this. It really gives us a good guiding plan for years to come. So if you haven't already, please check it out, rvaconnects.com. As I mentioned, there also are a bunch of strategies, 59 strategies broken out by 11 different categories of needs. So there were like bike, walk, like the modal things, but there was also sustainability, technology, anything that we could think the feds essentially might create a funding program for. We made a category and tagged which projects should fit into that. We also really importantly included some how we do business strategies. And this was kind of we had guiding principles in the path to equity, and just kind of trying to echo that same sentiment of like, it's not just what we're doing, but how we're doing it. That if we're installing all the sidewalks, but our small minority businesses aren't getting some of that business, then we're, why are we doing this? We can talk the talk, but we got to walk the walk too. So I encourage you to check those out too. And then lastly, just a note that the action plan has that prioritized list. And while we wanted it to be really short, it ended up being a little bit longer because we wanted to include the full equity driven reason behind each project being included. And that's kind of in the back of the plan. But the action plan is the current priorities. The strategic plan includes all of the projects that we identified that would meet an equity centered need, envisioning that like maybe in 5 years, we want to come back and ask Richmonders again, which of these projects are your priorities, to make sure that we're still working on what people want us to work on, and that we don't have to redo that whole process. We already got this kind of backlog of other projects we could pull from. So that is kind of the process. I'm going to hand it over to Shanice, wherever she went. Maybe. Did Shanice just get booted off?
Did we lose Shanice? I'll send her another invite.
Well, we lost Shanice, but I can speak
She's
to
back.
these too.
I see Shanice. I see you.
Okay.
She's probably just getting set up again.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I had some technical difficulties. It wouldn't be a Zoom if you didn't have one of those. Good evening. My name is Shanice, and I'm not sure of the end part that Kelly was speaking about, but I'll talk to you a little about the engagement that we did for Richmond Connects. When we initially engaged the community, we felt like the community was overwhelmed with the amount of surveys that people had. So what we did was we tried to redirect the community to care about the season that they were in, whether they had a barrier with transportation, whether they had a barrier with food insecurities, whether they had a lot of barriers with a lot of things. And so we met people where they were. We did community engagement where other people wouldn't. We went to corner stores. We went to neighborhoods where people didn't feel comfortable visiting. We went to schools and talked to rising high school seniors that will be the next group of people that will be really using transit for jobs, getting back and forth to school and all of those things. And we heard people say that no one asked them what it was that they really needed when it came to transit. And we heard them saying that they didn't feel like their input was utilized. So what we did was we created different follow-up platforms that didn't look like the other things that other people had done. So if Miss Jones always catches the bus at 7:40 on the corner of 23rd, I would make sure that once a week we went to visit Miss Jones and show her how her feedback was being utilized. I would say, hey, Miss Jones, we having a focus group this week, and you know, your comment is one of the topics we're talking about. Or Miss Jones, how can we spend a day with you on how it is that you get to work and see like some of the things that she was dealing with? So we just thought out of the box, and we wanted to make it people driven. And we also wanted to make sure that people's voices that are never heard were heard. And a lot of people that do outreach, and when we do a lot of projects, sometimes they're like pre-perceived that we know the needs of people. Like we know what people want, or yeah, we know what's better for people, but sometimes people have needs that we never even think about. People have outlets or different ideas that we never would think about. And it shows in this plan that using the people's voice has created a change that they believe in. So like, it's just I think it was bigger than engagement. It was like kind of life changing. We had some kids that spoke at city council on behalf of Richmond Connects to say this outreach was the first time they ever felt like them and their peers were heard. So we just tried to make sure along this journey of engagement and partnering with great people like Faith and Stephanie and Miss Felicia and all the other people that do great community engagement, that we made it about the people and not about us, that we made sure that we came back and reported something as small as, I don't like how I got a ride, get on the back door of the bus, versus, or, you know, it's no sustainable crossing right here, or me and my kids get wet when we catch the bus to work and to school. So we just tried to make sure that we really, really made this engagement about the people, because what our community is missing, like Kelly said, it's a big gap in people feeling like they matter. And the people that matter are the ones that use transit. They're the ones that have like a lot of barriers that people that use cars or have certain privileges are not even aware of. So we just tried to make it people driven, and that's what we did.
So now that Shanice gave the heart of the process, I'll give you some numbers. And these don't matter that much either. Like I'm always like hesitant to share this because I feel like this is somewhat like against what I always say is like, quality over quantity, right? We really focus on quality of our engagement. Shanice really spent time with people. And like Shanice said, we intentionally, when we had an online survey, also had paper copies so that like when you're talking to somebody, you were able to like have a conversation and maybe even capture what they say. Like just talk to somebody and be like, oh, like, so what you're saying is, and they're like, yeah. And you can, help people to relate what they're saying to what you're asking. Because a lot of times we come with these questions and people are like, I don't even know, I don't know what you're asking. But being able to have that conversation was so essential. We held some telephone town halls, which I actually think were a pretty effective way to at least give people a 5 or 10 minute snippet. I mean, we talked for 3 minutes at the beginning of these calls. So this is what Richmond Connects is. Here's some top projects. What are your questions? And the telephone town hall, people are able to, it's like it can be on your cell, but also on your landline. Hit 2 and there's an operator that takes your question. We are able to answer questions. One of those, we had over 10,000 people on just one of the calls, which was just really awesome to be able to connect with that many people. And 7,000 or so of those stayed on. I have to go back to the numbers, but like a good portion of them stayed on for 10 minutes or more. Like people were into it, and I think it touched a lot of people. Again, like Shanice being out at the corner store, at the schools, just like out and about. And Felicia's on too, and her team helped too. Do some of that. Go to the gas station, go where people are. But we did all kinds of different. We had focus groups, we had advisory committees. We of course had online engagement too. That wasn't the focus for our communities of opportunity, but for the people that are already engaged, it's like we don't need to try that hard. I think is a takeaway that like the people that are already engaged, we don't need to try that hard to reach them. They're already gonna get involved. I would say probably 200 times more effort spent on one of those voices that hadn't been captured. One of those voices probably as much effort as it took to capture 200 voices of people that are normally involved. They get the newsletters and they watch the Facebook, and that's not who we had to, really target in our outreach. Again, wherever possible, we tried to make like posters or make it somehow not on the phone. Like Shanice said, people are just like, I don't want to do another survey. Like, I'm tired of doing a survey. What have you done with what I've told you? So it felt good to be able to come out with some projects and then be like, which do you like? Yes or no? Which are your favorite? Something really concrete. And like I said, we use that information directly. And then our approach for like kind of the messier things, like the strategies, where we started with like over 100 strategies from ideas from the survey that people had put in, from previous master plan ideas. We felt like we can't ask the public to rank 120 strategies. And that's after we did an initial assessment with an equity scorecard asking who's helped by this, who's benefited, that sort of questions, called some of them out, but still we felt like it was too much. So we had focus groups. Shanice again was vital in identifying just like a really awesome group of people that kind of represented all corners of Richmond, and we asked them to do it, and we paid them $300, I think it was, to come sit with us for a day and work through this. We were like, and gave lunch obviously, but yeah. So compensated, recognizing that your time is just as worthy as my time. your neighborhood better than any consultant that the city can hire knows your neighborhood. So I think that's kind of like the takeaway. And Shanice, you can add to this too, is like compensation and representation. Like we just have to be intentional, and those two things go together, right? If you want a single mom that's low income, you need to pay her to come there. She does not have time or money. She's going to her second job. But if you're like, hey, you can take this day off, but I'll give you a $300 Visa gift card, now she might be able to come. It's just about accessibility. It's about being able to access it. Community based, like Shanice said, going to the community, not asking them to come to us, and accessible, not just in language and in disability, but also in not by language, I meant like Spanish and other languages, but also in like the way that we speak. Shanice was always like our filter. I'd be like, Shanice, does this make sense? And she would help us make it so that, anyone that we stop on the street can understand what we're asking them. And also accessible in terms of like people need it on paper. Sometimes it is just, too much inundation on the phone. So if I had to tell you a way to do outreach, all three of those would need to be included. And again, really thank you to everyone that gave us their ideas and their time to the process, because I feel like we were just like shepherds of a process that just getting the right people in the right place and asking the right questions. And everyone told us what we needed to know. So I appreciate the time. I see there's like some questions. I'll try and look and see if those are for us.
Yeah, I don't see many questions. But if you have hashtag, please put in the comments hashtag question for your question. That will help us a lot. I just seen so many people just give kudos on the incredible work that this is done. The fact that the equity part in the community engagement was huge. I am knocking on doors, hounding consultants, hounding agency leaders when it comes to, if you want people to participate in surveys, then you need to pay them for their time. And so you guys got that. This is great. This is definitely should be a model for the entire region on how to engage and what you can do. And I've hoped y'all have like a whole toolkit on how to do equitable engagement, because I think you ladies have done that very well. Do we have any questions that we can ask? I'm just curious, Shanice, what was one of the major things that you learned about this type of engagement in doing it?
I learned that, I think the biggest thing I learned is that we take the marginalized to be at the bottom of the pole when it comes to the knowledge that they have to make an impact and change. And I grew up in marginalized communities, and I know what that feels like to be discounted. And I think that I really heard how people, not just one group of people, but people in general do not feel valued and heard. Mm-hmm. And when you can make them feel like they're valued and heard, you get the inputs you're really looking for. So if you give somebody $15 to do a survey, you're going to get a $15 response because they're just feeling like they're a data point and you want to get something out of them really quick. I think another part that goes into that is that people want their city to be great and people want their modes of transportation to be great, and they're open to all kind of ideas of how to do that. They just feel like they haven't been listened to, and it was just an eye-opener of how I come to work every day and I talk to Kelly or I talk to you, Faith. I see you and Stephanie in the community, and I just took for granted that like everybody has the opportunity to really get out what they need to get out, and they don't. And this showed that if you just take a little time, you'll get exactly what everybody needs. Yep.
Can you guys give maybe some projects, particularly that you saw a trend in? So what was some of the sidewalks was number one. What was some other things, especially in the south of the city? I think that part of the city is pretty neglected. Can you highlight either some projects that you saw a trend on that people requesting, and then also what's going on the south part of the city?
So bus shelters, that is the number one complaint of everybody that uses public transportation. Even if you ride a scooter or you use bike share, it pours down raining, they don't even have, you could use the bus shelter to shield yourself from that. That was like the number one complaint in the South. And another thing in the South was it was no safe place to cross the street, like especially amongst Hall Street where Southside Plaza is. When you go down towards like Southwood, people say that the bus didn't run frequent enough. Those were like the top three things. Yep.
Great.
And I'll show you too. Look, I'm going to share screen.
Okay.
If you go to rbaconnects.com, and then you can go to the action plan from the homepage. You can look at the map. All the projects that were in the color orange were, which I don't say that word properly. I don't know how to say that word, orange, were the highest priority. So, as Shanice said, basically all of the bus stops that were in GRTC's Essential Transit Infrastructure Plan were included as in need of essential transit infrastructure. As Shanice said, that was just, voted to the top. But there were some other, shared use path, just pedestrian improvements, fill in these sidewalk gaps. We've been doing, the DBW's been doing a lot of work on Carnation and Old Warwick, but, to finish those projects and connect all of those, we have the North-South BRT with the, chosen alignment. So if you click on any one of the projects, it'll highlight it. So that's the North-South BRT. But I encourage people to go poke around in that if you haven't already. We did highlight that these railroad tracks are a barrier for folks that live in this apartment complex in Southwood Apartments. Like, the city kind of envisions this as being like a future development node. The people that live there now still, there's a lot of transit stops right there, but feel like they can't get there, that crossing that is unsafe. So that was like a top priority. We continue the work for the Whole Street side path that DPW has already, gotten a good amount of funding for. So blue is like, it's already got some funding.
Mm-hmm. I just want to highlight. Oh, I'm sorry.
I want to highlight one more thing if I can. Yeah. These two inconspicuous kind of dots that on the other map used to be the whole area shaded. And there is I think under the transit section in the full strategic plan, it shows the zones, but we did a study outside of GRTC, but working with VIA, who did the studies for GRTC, and is operating some of their service or is going to a south side zone that's here and a south side zone that's here for microtransit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
We also looked at a micro transit zone that will connect out to the airport and down to some of these jobs out here, and looked at one that would connect to that Azalea zone to some of these north side neighborhoods that are a little bit less connected. GRTC has applied for, I don't know, in a couple months when the 6-year improvement plan comes out, but has applied for this zone, this south side zone that's along the Route 1 corridor. So that would be like super critical connection for all of these neighborhoods in here, Cherry Gardens, all that would be able to do that same thing you're talking about, pull out your phone, which right now has very limited transit. There's like, I think 30 minutes service on Route 1 south of Hillside. But you can't get to it from all of these disconnected neighborhoods that we all know about the disconnected nature of those development patterns. Anyways, if that gets funded, that would be like a huge thing also for Southside that GRTC didn't initially consider because they are looking at the region, right? If I was GRTC, I wouldn't look at that either. I would be like, yes, these other areas that have no transit, we should focus on first. But we're like, South Side needs some connectivity too. So, like, fingers crossed that the
Yeah.
state sees it that way.
Yeah. I just wanted to highlight Felicia's comment when she mentioned flooding is a big issue, people unable to get off the bus due to large deep puddles. And this is definitely related to the poor conditions of sidewalks, especially when the sidewalks dip like this, then all that water just, so thank you for bringing that, a note to that, Felicia. Do we have any other questions in the chat? I don't think we do, but I wanted to ask this too. So in the relationship with GRTC and you guys is, are you, when you're looking at micro transit studies and you're looking at ways to connect the city of Richmond to the county, how was your relationship with GRTC in providing that information? Because I know you and I had a conversation because I am like I'm 2 miles from Center City, y'all. And I'm in Common House right now, and it takes me about 8 minutes by car to get here, but it will take me an hour and 15 minutes by bus. And so I mean, I'm so close, but yet so far away. So what are the conversations look like about connecting the city to the Henrico County?
Yeah, like on the east end.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So we also that south side zone on Route 1 they applied for, but we worked with Henrico in defining this zone. I'll have to pull it up. Look, I can just share it.
Sure.
I maybe can. Yeah. They also applied for that zone, which started off a little bit smaller, but then working with Henrico, we were like, people want these jobs out here. Let me find you the map. So they also applied for this zone. So we developed the study.
Okay.
And we developed the zone, but the majority of it's in Henrico. But it was from a need. It was from we had a focus group at the Fulton Resource Center. I think that's what it's called. Shanice, correct me if I'm wrong. Beautiful facility, cool place. And people are saying we want to go out to those White Oak shopping. There's like a Target. There's like some other stuff. We want to be able to get out there. We want to be able to get to the jobs out there, like the transit. And that's a really low ridership route right there too. So this, I would imagine, let's check back in a couple of years if we get that money, A, but B, on comparing the ridership numbers for that underperforming route with now a micro transit zone that can connect so much farther, that people, like you said, can get it in front of their door or at their curb, at the corner, instead of having to walk through a really undeveloped area with no sidewalks. Not that that is an excuse, and we shouldn't do sidewalks, but we know that's expensive and longer term. But yeah, they've applied for that zone, and for this zone, the Broad Rock, we just called it all three things: Broad Rock, Cherry Gardens, Richmond Highway. Because we were like, Richmond doesn't know one of those names, but in that zone, and so like this zone would be if we didn't apply for this one because it's probably the least need. Actually, it's fairly well connected, but if it were to go through, it would connect to that other existing zone. So we're totally thinking of it regionally.
Yeah, because
we're thinking of it like Richmonders think of it. Richmonders aren't like, oh, the city line ends right there.
I'm not going there. And people are transient. People are transient. If you live in the city of Richmond, you may have family, you may have job opportunities, doctor's appointments outside the city. So I'm so glad to hear that we're taking an account of, hey, Richmond city residents want to have access to the county and not do this whole big long loop to get to where they need to go.
So was I not sharing my screen that whole time?
No.
Sorry, what I was
there we
trying
go.
to show you. That's the zone, this east end zone, that the airport's over here and there's some warehouses. Okay. That's what I was saying. It's like this much in the city, but that's it started with something that Richmond said that they wanted and needed, you know.
Mhm.
And in fact, actually, the Easton Pulse extension was ranked much higher than these micro transit zones, but GRTC is for right reason. Like the development patterns do not support extending it that way right now. But we figure a really good first step for that connectivity is the micro transit, and very intentionally include the end of the pulse at the end of that zone. So you could get on it, get into the pulse, and then connect to the high frequency network.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. This has been a very great transit talk. Everyone is on in the chat saying amazing work, great work, and kudos. And please reach out to RVA Rapid Transit if there's any assistance that you need in getting the word out for any potential other projects that you have and you want the public's feedback on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All righty. So I just want to say thank you again, everyone, for joining RVA Rapid Transit for our transit talk. Next month on the list, we have Plan RVA joining us. They're going to be talking about their 2050 vision plan and ways that you can participate on giving your feedback on what the region should do when it comes to, again, multimodal transportation. And then also so that's April. In May, we're going to be inviting Matt Slatt. He is leading the City of Richmond's participatory budgeting process. So he's asking the City of Richmond or Richmonders right now, what would you do with $3 million? So this is another way that you as a city, if you are a resident of the City of Richmond, right now what is allowing you to do is to participate in the way that the City of Richmond uses their budget. And it does include transportation projects. So he's going to be on in May to talk about that process that's going to be starting up in this fall. And so you want to learn all about it. You can also learn more. You can register again with our newsletter so you can get those dates and updates about that. So last but not least, ride the bus. You riding the bus increases the demand for public transportation in the region, and it brings state dollars to us. So I encourage you to use microtransit as well. So if you know anyone in those zones that I mentioned, please let them know that this free service is available to take them from point A to point B right away. And then the wait time is really honorable. And then also adopt the bus stop. So as you know that the number one reason that people are asking or advocating right now, whether it's in the city of Richmond or whether it's in Henrico County or Chesterfield, is shelters and benches. And so right now we have an adopt the stop program where you can adopt the stop and keep it tidy and clean for the remainder of a year. And then last but not least, share your story. If you have a transportation story, just like Wade's that you heard, we want to hear that. If you are using currently micro transit and you've been able to access employment or a job because of it, we want to know about it so we can really share the impact that micro transit is having in our region. And last but not least, donate. We need support. Your support and your dollars helps us to create programs and keep things like this going, but also help support and advocate for bus riders around the region. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Transit Talk. Have a good day, y'all.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you so much, Shanice.